All right, today we are diving headfirst into a really detailed research report, one that completely picks apart the security failures around the assassination attempt on Donald Trump back on July 13th. We're going to walk through the evidence, piece together the timeline, and tackle the really tough questions these investigators are asking. And this is really the core question, isn't it? I mean, how does a Tier 1 security event, we're talking about the highest level of protection for a former president, the absolute gold standard, how does that fail so completely? So what happened? Well, the report makes it pretty clear. This wasn't just one mistake. It was a total, catastrophic collapse of the entire system. So let's get into it. A systemic security collapse. The report's first big point is that this wasn't some isolated incident. Nope, it was the whole system failing, layer by layer. And it all starts with the most basic rule of security. You have to secure the high ground.
And here's the official reason why they did it. The director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, said, "We wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof." That's the excuse for why there were no counter-snipers on the roof of the American Glass Research Building. Yeah, the exact building the shooter used.
Okay, but here's where it gets wild. Forensic analysts actually looked at the building and the official excuse just falls apart. The roof has a pitch of about 9 to 14 degrees. You know what OSHA calls that? A low-slope roof. It's considered completely walkable and well within safety standards. So the report basically says that whole unsafe roof story, it just doesn't match reality. And it gets even more contradictory. The report points out a few things. First, there were counter-snipers on other roofs at the rally, roofs that were actually steeper than this one. Second, after the shooting, you can see video of officers just casually walking all over that supposedly dangerous roof with no safety gear at all. And maybe the most critical point, by putting their own snipers inside the building, they literally created a blind spot. They couldn't see the one place they needed to be watching, the roof right above their own heads.
All right, let's talk tech. Another huge layer of security that should have been there is something called CUAS, or Counter-UAS Systems. Basically, it's anti-drone technology. For any big outdoor event like this, it's your eyes in the sky, your first defense against anyone trying to spy on you with a drone.
You're not going to believe this. The report found that the Secret Service specifically chose not to use this CUAS tech. And what happens? Well, about 2 hours before the rally, the shooter flew his own commercial drone right over the site. He basically got a free high-definition map of the entire security layout, and yep, that's how we found that perfect blind spot on the roof.
Okay, so now let's look at the timeline, because this is where it all really builds up. The report walks through the 90 minutes right before the attack, and honestly, the number of missed opportunities, it's just staggering. Think about that. 90 minutes. That is the window of time the report identifies where the shooter was visible, active, and could have been stopped. This wasn't some lightning-fast surprise attack. This was a threat that developed in slow motion, right in front of them.
So let's walk through it. It starts at 4:26 p.m., local police spot the guy. Almost an hour later, at 5:14, a USS sniper actually takes pictures of him. Then at 5:32, he's seen with a rangefinder. I mean, come on, that is a giant red flag. By 5:45, the main Secret Service command post is notified, and it all culminates at 6:08 when a local cop literally gets boosted onto the roof to confront the guy face to face. Every single one of these moments was a chance to shut this down.
And that 5:45 p.m. notification, the report calls that the critical failure. The security room, the nerve center, the whole operation, they knew there was a credible threat setting up, but they never radioed that warning to the agents on stage with Trump. The people whose job it was to be the last line of defense, they had no idea. They were completely in the dark.
And this just drives it home. That officer on the roof, after seeing the weapon, gets on the radio and screams, "Long gun." He's got a long gun. But that warning, it went nowhere. It never reached the detail on the stage. It was like shouting into the wind. A complete communication blackout at the worst possible moment.
So that's the operational side. But the report goes deeper, looking at some really strange forensic and medical questions. Basically, things about the physical evidence that just don't quite add up.
So first up, the gunshots themselves. When audio experts analyzed the recordings, they found something odd. The sounds came in what they call 3 different clusters. Basically, the first few shots sounded different from the next set of shots. And this has led some of the analysts in the report to ask a pretty big question. Did all the shots really come from just one spot?
And then there's the injury to Trump's ear. The official description is a 2-centimeter wound that took out a piece of cartilage. Okay, but here's the medical science. According to the report, cartilage doesn't have a blood supply. It heals incredibly slowly, and a wound like that should leave a pretty significant permanent mark. But when you look at photos from just a few weeks later, the ear looks almost perfectly healed. The medical experts cited find that outcome really unusual.
This next one might be the most jaw-dropping breach of protocol. When a protectee is under fire, the rulebook says you grab them and you get them out, period. They are cargo. You don't ask, you just move. But what happened here? The report says the agents actually paused the evacuation so Trump could find his shoes, and then they let him stand up and fist pump to the crowd, completely exposed, when they had no idea if there was a second shooter. It's a complete breakdown of procedure.
So you take all of this together, the operational mess, the ignored technology, the broken protocols, and it all leads the authors of this report to one final, really unsettling question. And this is where they land. The report boils it all down to two possibilities. Theory 1, this was just epic, catastrophic incompetence, a total meltdown from a system that's just fundamentally broken. Or, Theory 2, the negligence was so complete, so absolute, happening at every single level, that it starts to look exactly like it was done on purpose. The report's words are, functionally indistinguishable from deliberate action.
Of course, the report also touches on the political side of things. And what happened right after the event? Well, the polls showed a pretty significant bump in support for Trump, not just with his base, but with independents too. A lot of that was chalked up to sympathy and this powerful image of him as a survivor. And that's really the key takeaway from this part of the analysis. A massive security failure was almost instantly spun into a political victory. It became a story about survival, reinforcing that archetype of the hero fighting against all odds. And according to the report, that narrative shift really changed the whole dynamic of the campaign.
So, when you lay out all the facts from the report, from the unsafe roof that wasn't, to the ignored drone, the 90-minute warning window, and the broken protocols, it really forces you to confront that central question the investigators leave us with. What is the line between a catastrophic failure and deliberate inaction? That's what this report asks us to consider. Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We have a heavy one today. I want to start with a quote, not from the document we're covering, but from the man at the center of it all.
Okay.
Years ago, Donald Trump famously said, "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters." It was a statement about loyalty. It was a statement about the suspension of disbelief.
It was a statement about the power of a narrative. And today, we're looking at a research report titled Butler Shooting Anomalies and Election Impact that suggests we might have witnessed the complete inverse of that Fifth Avenue quote.
The inverse.
Yeah. Instead of him shooting someone, we saw him get shot, or at least appear to get shot, and the result was exactly what he predicted. A massive, almost instantaneous consolidation of voter loyalty.
The report is, frankly, it's disturbing. It dissects the attempted assassination on July 13th, 2024 with a forensic scalpel. And the conclusion it comes to isn't just that the Secret Service messed up.
No, it goes much, much further than that.
It says that the failures were so numerous, so specific, and so, I guess, physically impossible to attribute to just a series of accidents that they are, and I'm quoting the text directly here, indistinguishable from complicit intent.
That's the core thesis.
Yeah.
Indistinguishable from complicit intent. Now, I know how that sounds.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory.
It absolutely sounds like tinfoil hat territory. And when I first opened this dossier, I was expecting the usual internet rumors, grainy photos and speculation. But this isn't that. This is a forensic, acoustic, medical, and even architectural analysis. It builds what it calls a ladder of impossibility.
I like that phrase, ladder of impossibility, because that's exactly how I felt reading it. I started at the bottom thinking, okay, incompetence happens, bureaucracy is a mess, people make mistakes.
Sure, that's the default assumption.
But then you add the first rung, the roof, then the next rung, the drone, then the medical report, then the shoes. And by the end, you're standing at the top of this ladder looking down, and accident just doesn't look like a viable explanation anymore.
Exactly. And the mission of this deep dive today is to climb that ladder with you rung by rung. We are going to look at the physics of the sloped roof lie, the 90-minute warning that authorities apparently had and ignored, the medical impossibility of the ear wound, and the sheer theatricality of that fist pump moment.
So the central question is, was this a security breakdown, or was it a production?
That's it. A catastrophic failure or a carefully staged piece of political theater.
So let's start with the stage itself, the geography.
Yeah.
The architecture of the failure. The official excuse for why the shooter, Thomas Crooks, was able to get onto the roof of the AGR Building 6 was given by Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle.
Right, she testified under oath in Congress.
And she said that roof was excluded from the secure perimeter because it had a sloped roof. She actually claimed there was a safety factor involved. They didn't want to put a sniper on a sloped roof because it was, dangerous.
Right. Safety first. We wouldn't want a Tier 1 operator to, slip and scuff their knee while they're protecting a former president of the United States.
So when she said sloped, I imagined something steep. Like a church steeple or a residential house with a really sharp pitch. Something you'd need ropes for.
That's the image that phrasing creates, isn't it?
Wow.
But the report analyzes the actual geometry of the AGR Building 6. And, this thing isn't the Matterhorn. It's a standard industrial metal roof. The pitch was approximately 2.12 to 3.1.
Okay, stop there. You have to translate that for those of us who aren't roofers or architects. What does a 2.12 pitch actually mean in the real world?
It's actually really simple. In construction terms, that means for every 12 inches of horizontal length, so for every foot you go across the roof, only rises about 2 to 3 inches.
2 to 3 inches.
That's it. If you convert that to degrees, we're talking about an angle of roughly 9 to 14 degrees.
9 degrees? I'm pretty sure my driveway is steeper than 9 degrees.
It very likely is, yes. And to put this in a regulatory perspective, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, the government's own safety watchdog, they define a low-slope roof as anything under 18.4 degrees.
So this wasn't just walkable. It was officially a low-slope surface by federal safety standards.
Correct. You don't need harnesses. You don't need special ropes. You can walk on it just fine. In fact, the most damning piece of evidence against the safety factor claim is what happened immediately after the shooting.
What's that?
The video footage. You can see dozens of law enforcement officers walking, even running, all over that exact same roof without any safety gear whatsoever. They're up there securing the scene. So it was too dangerous for a trained sniper before the shooting, but perfectly safe for a whole crowd of cops during the active incident.
The logic just completely falls apart.
It does. And then there's the tactical contradiction, which is even worse.
What's that?
The Secret Service counter snipers, the Hercules teams, they were on roofs. They were positioned on the roofs of these large barns that were located behind the stage.
Okay.
And those barns had steeper pitches than the AGR building.
You're kidding.
Not at all. So just follow the logic here. They put their own elite snipers on the steeper, arguably more dangerous roofs, but left the AGR building, which had the perfect unobstructed line of sight and a gentler slope, completely unmanned because it was supposedly unsafe.
That feels less like a safety decision and more like an excuse that was retrofitted after the fact to explain a massive failure.
It creates a vacuum. By declaring that one specific, crucial roof unsafe, you create a public justification for leaving the high ground empty. And in protective doctrine, you never leave the high ground empty. That is Security 101. It's the first thing you learn.
So if you can't put a man on the roof itself, you'd put a man at a cherry picker looking at the roof? You'd have a drone watching it? You don't just pretend it doesn't exist?
You don't just ignore it. But they didn't just leave it empty, right? This is a key point in the report. They did have assets there. There were local police involved.
Right, the report mentions they were inside the building.
They were. The interior compromise. This is a crucial detail. The local snipers from the Butler and Beaver County Emergency Services units were stationed inside the AGR complex, on the second floor, looking out the windows.
Okay, so I'll play devil's advocate here for a second. Maybe they thought that was better. You've got cover from the elements, you have air conditioning, you can see the crowd. What's wrong with that?
Just think about the geometry of it. If you are standing inside a room and you're looking out a vertical window, can you see the roof that is directly above your head?
No, of course not. The ceiling is in the way.
Exactly. You are structurally blinded to the most immediate threat. By placing the protectors inside the building, they created a perfect geometric blind spot directly above them. The report notes that these agents were literally feet away from Crooks. He was crawling on the metal roof skin, and they were standing just below the roof deck.
They were in the same structure.
They were practically breathing the same air, but the agents couldn't see him because of the very architecture of their positioning. It's almost perfectly designed to fail.
It's almost like And I know this sounds conspiratorial, but if your goal was to genuinely secure the building, you'd be on the roof. If your goal was to appear to secure the building while deliberately leaving the roof open, you'd put your guys inside.
That is the exact implication the report raises. It's what they call security theater. You check the box on the form. Are assets deployed at the AGR building? Yes. But you deploy them in a way that renders them functionally useless against the most obvious threat, which is a sniper on the roof.
Okay, so we have a physically walkable roof that was lied about under oath. We have snipers who were positioned in a way that made them blind to the actual threat. But let's talk about time. Because the narrative we all consumed in those first 24 hours was that this was a flash event, a surprise attack. It came out of nowhere.
The surprise narrative is absolutely essential for the incompetence theory to hold up. If it all happens in a split second, you can blame reaction time. You can blame the fog of war confusion. But the forensic timeline in this report completely, utterly destroys the idea of surprise.
This wasn't a split-second failure.
This is a slow-motion car crash that played out over 90 minutes.
90 minutes. Okay, let's break that down. When does the clock start on this?
According to the report's timeline, the clock starts at 4:26 p.m. That is when Thomas Crooks is first spotted by local law enforcement near the AGR building. He isn't just there. He's loitering. He's acting suspiciously. He is flagged.
4:26 in the afternoon. And Trump didn't take the stage until, what, 5:30?
5:30 p.m., correct. So we are more than an hour out from the main event. Now, normally, in a security bubble of this magnitude, if you get a suspicious person report, you track them, you intercept them, you identify them. And if you can't find them, you heighten the alert level for the whole perimeter.
So what happened? Did they just lose him in the crowd?
Not for long. At 5:10 p.m., so now we're just 20 minutes before the president walks out, one of those local snipers who was positioned inside the AGR building, a guy identified as AGR Sniper 1, he spots Crooks again. And he doesn't just see him, he takes photographs of him on his phone.
He takes photos. So there is a digital time-stamped record created at 5:10 p.m. of the potential threat.
Yes, a time-stamped record. He sees Crooks prowling around the base of the building. He shares these photos in a text group, so information is flowing. Or at least it should have been.
Okay, so at 5:10 p.m., you have a verified suspicious person. You have photos. He's in the immediate vicinity of the highest value target. Now let's fast forward to the critical moment. 5:30 p.m. The music swells. The crowd is roaring. Donald Trump walks out of the secure tent and onto the stage.
Freeze the frame right there. At that exact second, 5:30 p.m., there is an active, unresolved, suspicious person report in the immediate perimeter. The subject of that report has not been detained. He has not been cleared. His location is not confirmed.
In a standard Tier 1 protective detail, does the protectee ever move in that scenario?
Absolutely not. It's a binary switch. If the perimeter is not green, the protectee holds. It's that simple. You keep him in the armored limo. You keep him in the steel-reinforced holding tent. You get on the radio and say, "Sir, we have a bogey in the sector. Give us 10 minutes to clear him."
You do not let the principal walk out into the open.
You do not let the former president of the United States walk onto a stage when there is a loose end, a ghost, prowling the perimeter. But they did. They let him walk right out.
And it gets worse.
Oh, it gets much worse. 2 minutes later, 5:32 p.m., Crooks is observed by multiple witnesses and law enforcement using a rangefinder.
A rangefinder. Okay, explain that for the audience, what that signifies.
A rangefinder is a device that uses a laser to measure the exact distance to a target. Hunters use them to calculate bullet drop over long distances. Snipers use them. Golfers use them. But if you see a guy in the bushes at a political rally and he's holding a rangefinder up to his eye and pointing it directly at the stage,
that's a gun. In terms of intent, that is a gun. You are dialing in a shot. There is no other interpretation.
Exactly. It is a pre-attack indicator of the highest possible order. At 5:32 p.m., any ambiguity is gone. This isn't a lost tourist looking for the bathroom. This is a hostile actor preparing an attack.
So that's 5:32 p.m. The shooting didn't happen until 6:11 p.m.
Correct. So from 5:32 until the first shot is fired, you have nearly 40 minutes where he has been seen with a rangefinder. But even more critically, the report highlights what they call the siloing of information. The Secret Service later claimed they didn't know about this. They claimed the local police text threads never made it to the main command post.
Ah, the silo excuse. Our radios didn't talk to their radios. We hear this after every single disaster. But this is the Secret Service. Their entire job is command and control and communication. Are we really supposed to believe that nobody thought to say, hey, we have a guy with a rangefinder on the main channel?
Well, that's where the incompetence versus malice question really comes into focus. Is it possible their communications were that catastrophically bad? Maybe. But let's add another layer to this. Let's talk about the drone.
The rearview mirror drone. I remember seeing a headline about this, but it vanished from the news cycle so fast.
FBI Director Christopher Wray confirmed it in testimony. Thomas Crooks flew a drone over the rally site approximately 2 hours before the event even started. He flew a reconnaissance pattern. He used that drone to see the security layout, to check the sight lines, check the angles.
And most importantly,
he likely used it to verify that the AGR roof was, in fact, completely empty.
but hold on a second. I can't fly my little DJI drone anywhere near an airport. My app literally won't let the propellers spin up. You're telling me someone can just fly a consumer drone over a presidential rally with no consequences?
You shouldn't be able to. The Secret Service possesses advanced CUAS technology, counter unmanned aerial systems. They have things like aeroscope units that can detect a DJI drone the second its controller is turned on. They can pinpoint the pilot's location. They can jam the signal and force it to land. It is standard, off-the-shelf kit for a presidential visit.
So what happened? Was the machine broken? Did the battery die?
No. According to the report, and this is based on whistleblower allegations that came out later, the Secret Service declined to deploy the CUAS system at the Butler rally.
They left it in the truck.
They either didn't request it from the DHS stockpile, or they had it on site and didn't set it up. The end result is the same. They effectively blinded themselves to the entire aerial domain. So Thomas Crooks had complete air superiority for his pre-attack reconnaissance.
This is it's stacking up too high. You leave the highest value roof empty. You put your snipers inside where they can't see the roof. You ignore the 4.26 p.m. suspicious person report. You ignore the photos at 5.10. You ignore the rangefinder at 5.32. And you turn off the one piece of tech that could have caught him doing his recon 2 hours earlier.
If you were writing a screenplay for how to allow an assassination attempt to happen, this is exactly the script you would write. You remove every single layer of security redundancy. A good security system is like Swiss cheese. It has holes. But the key is, you stack multiple slices so the holes don't line up.
Here, it seems like they took a drill and lined up every single hole perfectly.
Precisely. Which brings us to the actual shooting. Because if the setup was perfect for the shooter, the execution of the attack brings up even more questions. This is where we get into section 3 of the report, the stand down and the two-shooter acoustics.
Right. This is where we get into the really technical stuff, the acoustic forensics.
It is very technical, and I want to be clear for everyone listening. This is based on the physics of sound waves, analyzing the digital recordings from multiple sources at the scene.
So break it down for us. When a high-velocity rifle is fired, what are we listening for?
You're listening for two distinct sounds. First, you have the crack. That's the sonic boom created by the bullet as it travels faster than the speed of sound and passes by you. Second, you have the thump. That's the sound of the muzzle blast, the explosion coming from the gun itself.
Crack and thump. Got it.
The time delay between that crack and that thump tells you how far away the shooter is. Sound travels at a constant speed, roughly. So if the time lag is longer, the shooter is further away. It's simple math.
Okay.
Audio experts, including some cited in the report like Dr. Chris Martinson, they analyzed the waveforms from multiple videos and microphones at the rally, and they found 3 distinct clusters of shots.
3 clusters? I thought it was just one burst of fire.
That's what it sounded like to the naked ear in the chaos. But the machines tell a different story. Cluster A was shots 1 through 3, Cluster B was shots 4 through 8, and Cluster C was the single shot, shot 9, which was the Secret Service sniper finally returning fire.
And what's the significance of these clusters?
The analysis suggests that shots 1 through 3 had a significantly different acoustic signature than shots 4 through 8.
Different in what way?
Shots 1-3 were described consistently as muffled. The crack-thump separation was inconsistent with the known position of Crooks on the roof. The theory that the report puts forward, and it is just a hypothesis, is that the first 3 shots may have originated from inside the AGR building.
Inside, you mean like through a vent? Or an open window?
Possibly through an open window. Remember those local snipers were positioned at open windows on the second floor? The acoustic signature of those first shots suggests an enclosed space, or at least a different point of origin. Then suddenly, shots 4 through 8 ring out, and they're described as crisp and clear, and their acoustic signature is perfectly consistent with the roof position.
So the theory is what, exactly? That there was a second shooter inside the building who fired first, maybe as a distraction, and then Crooks opened up from the roof.
No.
Or that Crooks fired all of them, but moved from a window to the roof mid-attack.
The report acknowledges the Doppler effect counter-argument, which is that if the microphone or the shooter is moving, it can change the sound. But the variance is so stark that it remains an anomaly. And it feeds directly into the stand-down theory regarding the counter-sniper team, Hercules 1.
The Hercules 1 flinch. We've all seen that viral video, the sniper on the barn roof, looking through his scope.
It is chilling footage. You see the sniper, he's settled in, he's looking through his high-powered scope. Then he suddenly lifts his head up and away from the scope, he flinches. And it's after that movement that the sound of the first shots rings out.
He flinched before the shots were fired.
Video analysis suggests he reacts a fraction of a second before the audible report of the shots reaches his position. The question is why? Did he see something through his scope? Did he hear a radio call in his earpiece telling him to stand by?
What's the official explanation?
The official report suggests rules of engagement hesitation. They say he saw local police officers running towards the building and he was afraid of a blue-on-blue incident. You know, shooting a friendly cop by mistake.
That's a valid fear. You don't want to shoot a deputy in the chaos.
It is a completely valid fear. But in the context of the staged event theory, the skeptic looks at that flinch and sees a man who knows something is about to happen but has been told to hold his fire. He's waiting for the go code, or he's waiting for the first part of the event to play out before he's cleared to engage.
And there was a pause in the shooting, right? It wasn't just one continuous volley of 8 shots.
There was a significant pause. And here is a detail that the mainstream news barely touched on. The shot that initially stopped Thomas Crooks. It wasn't the Secret Service. It was a local Butler County officer on the ground who drew his sidearm and returned fire.
I completely missed that. I thought the sniper on the barn was the hero who took him out immediately.
The sniper in the barn took the final fatal shot. That was shot 9. But before that, a local cop on the ground fired up at the roof. That shot likely suppressed Crooks, made him duck for cover, and stopped his volley of fire. If that local cop hadn't taken that initiative, how many more shots would Crooks have gotten off while Hercules 1 was hesitating?
That is a terrifying thought. So the whole Secret Service hero narrative is maybe not the full story. It was a local cop who did the brave thing first.
In terms of stopping the act of oppression, the evidence suggests yes. The Secret Service sniper closed the loop, but only after the damage was done and the initial threat had been suppressed by local law enforcement.
Okay, I want to pivot now. We've talked about the setup, we've talked about the shooting itself, but for me, the most jarring part of this entire report is what happens in the seconds after the shooting stops, the behavior on that stage.
Section 4 of the paper, Theatrics and Protocol. Yeah. This is where that Fifth Avenue concept really comes into play. If you are staging an event to galvanize your base, the reaction to the attack is actually more important than the attack itself.
The shoes. I still cannot get over the shoes.
Let's just read the transcript from the hot mic. The agents pile on top of Trump. He's on the ground. The mic is live. We hear someone yell, "Shoot her down, we're clear." The agents start to lift him up. And what does Donald Trump say?
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
And the agents?
Yeah.
They wait. One of them says, "I got you, sir." And they pause the evacuation.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate again. The man just had a bullet fly past his head. He's 78 years old. He was knocked off his feet, out of his shoes. He's in shock. Isn't it just a weird, irrational human reaction? I want my shoes! It doesn't necessarily mean it's a conspiracy.
If it were just him saying it, I would agree with you 100%. Victims of trauma say strange things. They worry about their purses, their glasses, their pets. But the agents are not supposed to be in shock. They are highly trained machines. And their doctrine is brutally simple. Cover and evacuate.
The whole meat shield protocol.
Exactly. In a code red situation, the protectee is no longer a president. He's cargo. He is a package. You do not ask the package if it is comfortable. You do not wait for the package to find its loafers. You grab the package by the belt, by the collar, you surround it with bodies, and you move with maximum violence of action to the armored vehicle. Speed is life. Every second you are stationary is another second for a second shooter to take a shot.
But they didn't do that.
No. In that moment, they ceded command of the situation. They let the protectee dictate the tempo. Let me get my shoes. They wait. And then, the most critical breach of all, they stop again.
The fist pump.
Trump says, wait, and he stands up. The agents, who should be burying his head into their chest to protect him from a potential second shooter, they actually pull back. They create a window. They allow him to expose his head and chest to the entire rally site.
Tactically, that is insane.
Tactically, it is suicide. We just discussed the acoustic anomalies and the two-shooter theory. In that moment, the agents have no idea where the shots came from. They certainly haven't cleared the water tower, the tree line, or the thousands of windows in the distance. If there is a second gunman, Donald Trump is a stationary target, perfectly framed by his agents, just waiting for a follow-up shot.
So why on earth would they allow it? Why would a Secret Service detail leader allow his protectee to commit what is essentially tactical suicide?
There are only two possible answers, according to the report. One, they were so breathtakingly incompetent and so cowed by Trump's personality that they completely forgot all of their training in a moment of crisis. Or two, they knew there was no second shooter. They knew the event was concluded.
And they knew the script was over.
And that was the cue for the photo op. The report analyzes the composition of the photos taken in that moment by Evan Vucci and Doug Mills. It is perfect. You have the blue sky, you have the American flag unfurled perfectly in the background, which, by the way, is upside down in some frames, the signal for distress, but perfectly framed in the main iconic shot. You have the blood on the face, the fist in the air, the agents looking up at him almost in reverence.
It looks like raising the flag on Iwo Jima. It's like a Renaissance painting of a conquering hero.
The report calls it the visual codification of the hero narrative. In one single image, it transformed a security failure into a political triumph. That image was on T-shirts and campaign posters before the rally site was even cleared of people. If you are orchestrating a Fifth Avenue moment, that photo is the deliverable. That is the product you paid for.
But to get that perfect photo, you need the blood, you need the wound. And this is where the report gets, well, it gets biological.
Section 5, medical anomalies, or as the report calls it, the magic ear.
We all saw the giant white square bandage he wore. It became a fashion statement at the Republican National Convention. But what was actually underneath it?
Dr. Ronnie Jackson, Trump's former White House physician, issued an official letter. In it, he stated that the bullet created a 2-centimeter wide wound that extended down to the cartilaginous surface of the ear.
2 centimeters, that's almost an inch. That's a significant gouge out of someone's ear.
It is. So let's talk for a second about ballistics and biology. An AR-15 fires a 5.56 round. That bullet is traveling at roughly 3,000 feet per second. When a projectile like that passes even within millimeters of soft tissue, it creates a massive shock wave or temporary cavitation bubble.
So it's not just the metal touching you, it's the air pressure around the bullet that does the damage.
Correct. The hydrostatic shock shreds soft tissue. It rips it apart. If a 5.56 round actually took a 2-centimeter piece out of his ear, the surrounding tissue would be hamburger. It would be ragged, necrotic, and bleeding profusely for a long time.
Okay, and what about the cartilage?
This is the absolute key. Auricular cartilage, the stuff that makes up your ear, is avascular. That's a medical term meaning it has no direct blood supply. It gets its nutrients by slowly diffusing them from the surrounding skin. Because of this, it heals incredibly slowly. It's highly prone to infection. It is prone to cauliflower deformity like you see on wrestlers. You can't just stitch cartilage easily. It doesn't knit back together in a week.
But we saw him without the bandage less than 2 weeks later.
We did. It's interesting, FBI Director Wray initially questioned if he was hit by a bullet or by shrapnel, and he was attacked relentlessly for even suggesting it. But look at the high-resolution photos that were taken on July 26th. That's just 13 days after the event. You can find them online, zoomed in on his right ear.
And it looked completely fine.
It looked pristine. There was no notching. There was no missing 2-centimeter chunk. There was no visible scar tissue. There was no deformity. The helix, the outer curve of the ear, was perfectly smooth and uninterrupted.
Is that medically possible? Can a 78-year-old man regenerate a chunk of cartilage in 2 weeks?
No. It is biologically impossible. You cannot regenerate lost cartilage. If a chunk is gone, it is gone forever. You would need reconstructive surgery, skin grafts. It's a process that takes months, not days. The fact that his ear was perfectly whole suggests one of two things.
What are the options here?
Option A. The graze was microscopic. It was a tiny scratch from a piece of glass or shrapnel, and the 2-centimeter bullet wound report from Dr. Jackson was a deliberate lie. A fabrication to make the survival seem more miraculous. Or option B, the stage theory. The blood was theatrical, maybe from a small cut or even a blood packet. The wound was superficial or entirely non-existent.
Like in professional wrestling, a wrestler might blade themselves, make a tiny cut on their forehead to get the visual effect of blood without any real injury.
That's the perfect analogy. It fits the Fifth Avenue thesis. You need the visual of the blood to sell the danger and the survival, but you can't risk actual permanent damage. The pristine ear, just 13 days later, is the glitch in the matrix. It's the piece of evidence that betrays the entire narrative.
Speaking of narratives and myths, this is the point where the report takes a turn I really did not expect. We go from ballistics and biology to the stars.
Section 6, the astrological alignment. Now, I know what you're thinking. We are a data-driven show. Why are we suddenly talking about horoscopes?
It feels like it could discredit all the hard science we just spent the last half hour talking about.
And I thought so too at first. But the report includes it not as proof of magic, but as proof of myth-making, or as they call it, metaphysical staging. They're analyzing how this event was constructed to appeal to every segment of the base, including the spiritual and conspiratorial ones.
Okay, humor me. What did the stars supposedly say on July 13th, 2024?
The report uses the sidereal zodiac, the Fagan-Bradley system, for those who follow it, and it notes a very rare and classically violent conjunction in the sky that day. The planets Mars and Uranus.
Mars is the god of war, right?
Mars represents violence, guns, sharp objects, aggression. Uranus represents sudden, shocking events, electricity, rebellion, disruption. On July 13th, these two planets met at the exact same degree in the sky. 26 degrees, the constellation Taurus.
Okay, so a sudden, shocking, violent event.
But look at where they met. They formed this conjunction directly on top of a fixed star called Algol.
Algol, it sounds like a villain from a sci-fi movie.
It's pretty close. The name comes from the Arabic Ras El Ghul. It means the ghoul's head, or the demon's head. In astrological traditions spanning thousands of years, across multiple cultures, Algol is considered the most malevolent, dangerous star in the heavens. It's specifically associated with beheading, with violence to the neck and throat area.
Violence to the head.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker. This triple alignment, Mars, Uranus, Algol, was happening at a point in the sky that formed a perfect square, a 90-degree angle of conflict, to Donald Trump's natal sun and midheaven in his birth chart. The midheaven represents your public image, your career. The sun is the self, the leader. So you literally have a cosmic signature for sudden violence to the head of the leader in the public eye.
It reads like a script that was written in the stars.
And the report notes that in a final twist, Trump's own North Node, which in astrology represents his point of destiny or fate, is also located at 26 degrees Taurus. So the astrological interpretation is that this kill shot energy from Algol was transmuted, or changed, by his own destiny into a source of power and public acclaim. He didn't die, he was mythologized.
So even if you don't believe in astrology for a second, the symbolism is just perfect. It's too perfect.
And that is the report's entire point. It suggests that for the true believers in his base, the QAnon crowd, the more spiritually inclined supporters, this alignment serves as divine proof. God spared him. The stars aligned for him. It reinforces the Messiah complex that surrounds him.
It's another layer of the performance. It turns a political candidate into a mythological figure. A man who cheated death because the universe itself willed it to be so.
Yeah, that is the ultimate goal of a staged event like this, if that's what it was. You aren't just trying to win a debate or get a good news cycle. You're trying to become an avatar, an untouchable icon.
So let's pull all the way back. Let's stand at the top of that ladder and look down. We have the roof that was declared unsafe but was perfectly walkable. We have the 90-minute warning that was ignored. The drone detection that was conveniently turned off.
The acoustic anomalies that hint at something more complex than a lone gunman. The tactical suicide of the fist pump photo op.
And the medical miracle of the instantly healed ear. When you look at all of it together in a single frame, does that look like incompetence?
Incompetence is usually messy. It's random. It's chaotic. One guy forgets a key. Another guy's radio battery dies. This feels coordinated. The holes in the Swiss cheese weren't just there by accident. It feels like they were drilled with precision.
Indistinguishable from complicit intent. That's the verdict from the paper.
That's the verdict.
So let's go all the way back to that Fifth Avenue quote. I could shoot someone and not lose any voters.
Trump understands his audience on a primal level. He knows that they crave a fighter, but more than that, he knows they crave a victim narrative, that the deep state, they, are constantly trying to stop him, to silence him, to kill him. This event provided the ultimate confirmation of that entire worldview.
It weaponized empathy, it weaponized outrage, it was the perfect story.
And if this report is to be believed, it required the active participation, or at least the deliberate, willful blindness of the Secret Service.
Yeah.
And that is the truly terrifying part of this. If this theory is true, it means the entire protective apparatus of the United States was used as a stage crew for a political campaign stunt.
And the voter, the citizen watching at home.
The voter is the mark. The voter is the audience member at the magic show, applauding enthusiastically, not realizing the woman in the box was never really sawed in half.
It's a very hard pill to swallow. We want to believe in our institutions. We want to believe that when we see blood on the news, it's real. But this report, it forces you to ask, are we watching history unfold? Or are we watching theater?
The evidence, the physics of the roof, the timeline of the warnings, the biology of the wound, it all suggests that what we saw was theater. Extremely dangerous, high-stakes theater. But theater nonetheless.
I want to leave the listeners with that final thought from the report. Go look at that famous photo one more time. The fist pump. Don't look at the flag or the sky. Look at his eyes. Look at the faces of the agents around him. Does that look like chaos? Or does that look like choreography?
Once you start to see the strings, it's really hard to unsee them.
Thank you for going on this deep dive with us. It's an uncomfortable one, but the truth usually is.
Stay curious and always question the official narrative.
Always. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.
www.youtube.com at Aquarian Rising. Listen to my music anywhere you dream. Just search for Aquarian Rising. Reach out to me on x.com, Aquarian Rising. Check out my cool free e-software, aquarian-rising.itch.io.